I still get amazed at the looks that I get when I tell people that I've lived all over Latin America. People instantly say, "Aren't you worried about cartels? Isn't it dangerous? Won't you get kidnapped? Isn't it all third world down there?" And honestly, I can't even blame them. I used to think the exact same thing growing up. But after living there the past few years, I've realized how wrong those assumptions actually are. Yes, some areas can be rough. And yes, you need to be aware of your surroundings. But there are also safe neighborhoods, breathtaking views, some of the friendliest people that you'll ever meet, and a lifestyle that most people back home can't even imagine. And in this video, I'm going to break down everything that you need to know before your first time in Latin America, so that you don't just survive here, you thrive. So first things first, I'm going to address the elephant in the room, and that's the danger of Latin America. If you do a search online, you'll read stuff about people getting kidnapped or others getting drugged, and then they get their bank accounts cleaned right out. And that stuff does happen in Latin America. However, I've also been down there for 2 years, and I've felt unsafe in some areas, but I've never had anything bad happened to me, and there are a few reasons that have contributed to this. The first is mindset and awareness. You got to realize when you're in Latin America that you're no longer in the bubble that North America has really put you in. For instance, I've gone on a hike that would have been illegal in Canada just because it was unsafe. You can do things that are absolutely stupid, and it's up to you to look out for yourself. Nobody else is going to do it. You need to be smart. You need to keep an eye out for things. When I'm walking on the street, I'm always looking for people following me or motorcycles driving by so that I can put my phone away. I keep my hands in my pocket on my expensive devices. I don't walk around with AirPods in. You just got to be smart when you're on the street. Another thing that's also helped me is to trust my instincts. A great way to explain this is when I was down in Colombia, I needed an SSD, which is a storage device for my computer. I was running out and I had to buy one there in order to have enough storage to edit a video and post it the following day. So I did some research, went down to this mall that ChatGPT recommended, and was looking for a specific place that had raving reviews about it not being like a scammy place, and I couldn't find it. And while I was looking, this booth asked me what I needed, and I told them that I need this SSD, and I didn't feel good about the interaction. They took off, went for a walk, and gave me a price. When they're gone, I looked it up, and it was way too expensive. So I ended up just telling the guy that I had to leave. But it's situations like this that if I wasn't trusting my instincts, I probably would have just paid the extra money for a device that probably wasn't even legit and got completely scammed. So this is why I think it's important to trust your instincts when you're there. And if you get a gut feeling not to do something, then don't do it. Another thing that I do to protect myself is ask the locals. They know what areas to avoid and what areas that are safe to go into. For instance, there's this cross in Lima, Peru that you can see pretty well anytime you're on the shoreline. And I've always wanted to go there and check it out, but the locals said that it was extremely dangerous there. And when I looked it up on the map, it did look pretty sketchy. So just having that local knowledge is always going to be helpful in keeping you safe. So back to the cross analogy, if I was unsure about the neighborhood, I would have looked it up before going there. That way I can make sure it's safe, as not every neighborhood in Latin America is going to be safe, especially as a tourist. There are places that you can live and live well, but there are other places that you definitely shouldn't go to. So you want to make sure you're researching neighborhoods before you go. If I ever find myself in a neighborhood that I don't feel comfortable in, I can always turn around or call an Uber. But for the most part, I can avoid these situations by doing my research first. Probably a number one crime in Latin America is motorcycles stealing your phone. So when you're on the street, always keep it in your pocket. If you need to check it for an Uber or something, go close to the entrance of the restaurant that you're in, or even do it while you're in the restaurant or your apartment, just because it can happen in a blink of an eye. If you pull out your phone and a motorcycle's driving by, he can grab it right away. If I am on the street walking and I need to check Google Maps or something, I tuck myself into a bush or a wall, just put my body in between my phone and the road just so that they can't easily access it. Or I check it in front of a police officer. Another habit that I do is not bringing all my cards and cash. So my wallet has like this insert that's very thin. Anytime I go out, I'll bring the insert, put a card in it and a little bit of cash. And that way, if someone ever does rob me, they're not taking everything I own. They just have one card that I can easily shut off, and then I'm not dead in the water. I still have other cards that I can use and more cash. If I have to bring like a lot of cash or multiple cards, another trick that you can do is bring like a dummy wallet and put a few cards that don't really mean anything to you in it. So then if someone tries to rob you, you can give them that wallet and your other wallet is completely safe. On the topic of money and wealth, you don't want to flash wealth when you're there. Don't wear fancy friggin' watches or nice sunglasses. Just dress like the locals do to blend in. And if you do this, nobody's going to bug you. A habit that I do when booking a place, if you get like a ground level Airbnb in like a house or something, it just gives another opportunity for you to get robbed as people can break in. Where if you live in an apartment building with a doorman, not only is it going to be a lot harder for a thief to get by the doorman, but there's 100 other apartments in the building that they can rob, reducing your chances of getting robbed. So this is another great hack. And in sketchier areas, for instance, my Airbnb in Colombia, the doorman had a gun. So it just adds an extra layer of safety that you wouldn't have if you didn't rent a condo with a doorman. In terms of nightlife and safety, if it's your first little while down there, I wouldn't go out alone. However, that's not to say you can never go out alone. I did go out quite a bit alone and was completely fine, but you got to be aware of a few things. The first is not to get blackout drunk. That makes it so easy for someone to take advantage of you and rob you. So just be smart when you go out. Don't get shit-faced. Just have a few drinks, have some fun, but don't get stupid. Another thing you don't want to do when you're out is don't leave your drinks unattended. There's a drug called scopolamine down there, especially in Colombia. It's in a few other countries, but not as prevalent. But what happens is someone will slip it in your drink and then you become agreeable. They'll take you back to your place, rob you, and clean out your bank accounts. So to avoid this, keep an eye on your drink. Make sure you don't leave it unattended, and that'll help you prevent getting drugged. And lastly, when you do go down there, there's neighborhoods that are extremely safe and there are neighborhoods that are extremely dangerous, no matter what country you're in. And you want to make sure that you stay in the safe neighborhoods. Doing so will prevent 90% of the crime. Doing these things that I've just mentioned will prevent the other 9%. And then the last percentage is just up to fate. There's always a chance that something will happen. Honestly, in most places, the worst that's going to happen to you is that you get robbed. But doing all the things that I've mentioned is going to greatly reduce your risk of that. The next biggest thing that you need to be aware of is health and hygiene. For starters, when it comes to water, expect that it's not safe to drink. Most places down there, you can drink the water, and this also means that you can't have ice in your drinks, even in a restaurant. You want to be very careful of this as it will make you sick. And unless you're absolutely certain that it is safe to drink, I wouldn't drink it. Stick to bottled water as that's going to be your safest bet. Along the lines of this, food washed in water like lettuce is also not going to be safe to eat in most places. You got to be very wary of it. Food poisoning is a bigger concern down here than in North America, so you definitely want to be careful what you eat. The general rule of thumb is to boil it, cook it, peel it, or leave it. One thing that I have done is take Dukerol before going down to South America. This isn't going to protect you completely, but it does help. So obviously, I'm not a doctor. Talk to your own doctor and see if he recommends it for you. But that's something that I've done to protect myself. I also have an antibiotic that I carry with me just in case something happens. I got it prescribed by my local travel health center, whatever you want to call it. Personally, I avoid street food at all costs. I know some of you might want to try it. And if you do, although I don't recommend it, make sure that you go to a place that is busy. If there's no one there, there's probably a reason nobody's there. So if some place is busy, that probably means it's safe. But again, I don't eat it. So take that for what it's worth. And another hack that I do to avoid food poisoning is before I go to a restaurant that I am unsure about, I'll look it up on Google and then I'll sort the reviews from lowest to highest and see if there's any reviews about someone getting food poisoning. If there is, I try to avoid the place, especially if there's multiple ones. Now, this isn't to scare you. I haven't had any stomach issues while being down there, but I also have, again, looked out for myself and made sure that I was doing these things every time that I went out. The next thing you need to be aware of is money and scams. So one of the biggest scams down there is with taxis, especially if you aren't really fluent in Spanish. It's not unheard of for them to take advantage of you. They'll tell you one fare when you get in the cab, and then when you go to leave, they'll give you another fare. Or there's stories online about a taxi not being a real taxi and then kidnapping someone. And there's just always some nonsense with the taxi. And because of this, I typically use Uber when I'm in Latin America. I find they're the safest bet. And since you're paying ahead of time, there's no disputes in price. That said, Ubers are not legal in some countries down there. So in that case, ChatGPT what the best mode of transportation is, and always try and pay before you leave for your destination. Another thing you see down in Latin America is people getting ripped off in restaurants and paying a price that they weren't expecting. My way around this is when I get the menu, I always take a photo of the price that's listed on the menu. That way, if they come back and say something's more expensive than what you thought it was, you have an argument and proof that they're just scamming you, basically. When it comes to taking money out of an ATM, make sure you're doing it during the day. Don't do it at nighttime. You're just asking for trouble there. And don't carry all your money and cards around with you all at once. Make sure you leave some at your apartment and only take what you need on you just in case you get robbed. Another thing on the topic of money is exchange rates. And some countries have a unofficial rate and an official rate. And the unofficial rate's going to give you a lot more bang for your buck, basically. For instance, in Argentina, the official rate when you use credit cards and when you take money out at like banks and stuff is not very favorable. Then you can use a Western Union and it's quite a bit more favorable. And then there's also the blue rate, which is technically illegal, but it's also a lot more favorable than the official rate. So always check if there's something like that in the country that you're going to. Sometimes there's these tricks to get a better exchange rate, which is going to make your money go a lot farther down there.
Pipe down, I don't care what's next, I need it right now. And I got it numbers going stupid like they dropped out. What they think they doing, I don't know, but we can find out. Feel like Lewis Hamilton said, go and shut the lights out. Look, if I said it, you already know. They ain't never touching what I'm doing, told them let it go. I ain't with it ticky-tacks like I ain't playing X and O's. Go compare the numbers, said I think they missing decimals. Look, told them that I'm about to run it now. Too much money out of music, dog. Now the bank account is never running out. Educated on the business, said when I'm talking to him, I can dumb it down. At the summit of this mountain, dog, and I'm camping out. I'm never coming down. Look.
Now, another thing that you might deal with in Latin America is people hustling you. Whether it's taxi drivers harassing you when you're leaving an airport or a restaurant worker trying to get you to eat at their restaurant. There's quite a bit of harassment that goes on down there. And honestly, if you don't deal with it correctly, it can put you in a vulnerable situation. For instance, I had a guy in Colombia trying to get me to buy him some food, and he was trying to lead me down this alleyway, and there was no restaurant down that alleyway. So who knows what would have happened if I just followed his lead. But it's things like these that make it important that you know how to deal with this hustling. So usually what I do is, if I can, ignore the person. If they're bugging me, just act like I'm not hearing them or not paying attention to them. And typically you can walk right by them without any issue. Sometimes they make it so you have to stop. And in that case, typically what I say is, yo no hablo español. And that tells them that I don't speak Spanish. Or I'll just say I don't speak Spanish and English. And they get the gist of it. Now, for some reason, an insane amount of people who are harassing you on the street speak English, despite locals not typically being able to. And if that's the case and someone's harassing you and these other two methods don't work, then I typically just say that I'm in a rush, I can't stop right now to talk, or that I'm not interested. And typically they respect that. Now, when it comes to taxis, typically what I do is I tell them that I already have a ride, because they don't really take no for an answer. I'm hesitant to tell them that I have an Uber just because some countries Uber is a little bit frowned upon and in a gray area. So I try to avoid that. But once I tell them that I already have a ride waiting for me, they typically back off. Another common one that you'll see is someone comes up to you and tries to put something on your wrist or give you something that you just automatically take because they're handing it to you. Whatever you do, don't take it. Don't let them put it on your wrist. It's not the end of the world if you do, but I've had this happen to me a couple times. And in the beginning, you think they're genuine and just trying to give you something, but they're always looking for money and they won't leave you alone until you give them money. So what I did in these two situations is I gave it back to them. If they wouldn't take it back, I would have just sat it on the ground and walked away. And another thing that helps here is saying that you don't have any cash on you. Once they realize that, they leave you alone. Same with people begging for money. Just say you don't have any cash, and anyone looking for money is going to leave you be. In Spanish, what I say is yo no tengo dinero, and they understand what that means. And lastly, when it comes to restaurants, I've found the best thing to do to deal with these people are to say that you already have a reservation somewhere, or to tell them that you already ate. Telling them either is basically going to tell them that there's no sense bothering you because you're not going to be a customer anyways. So once you tell them that, they back off. Now, the next tip is language and communication. Most of Latin America is going to be speaking Spanish, with the exception of Brazil, which speaks Portuguese. It's best to learn a little bit before you go down there. I've made out just fine just knowing the basics, but it definitely would have been handier if I spoke it more fluently. Nobody down there really speaks English, so you definitely need to make sure that you at least have a translation app. And honestly, I recommend getting multiple translation apps, as sometimes one doesn't work or it doesn't translate properly. So in that case, the second one as a backup is always great. I typically use Google Translate or the Apple Translate app. Both work decent. They're kind of a pain in the ass to use, and they're definitely not perfect, but they get the job done. Now, these translation apps are not very good at like understanding the structure of sentences and stuff. So sometimes what they translate to you doesn't make any sense. So in that case, I'll use ChatGPT and just say what I want to say. I tried it once for like a live translation when I was talking to someone, figured it would work well, but in that instance, it did not work at all. So typing it out and asking it to translate to English or Spanish is your best bet. Usually it has the most accurate translations. It just doesn't do a very good job with the live ones. Another thing that's odd with Latin America that you don't really see a whole lot of in North America is they use WhatsApp for their communication. You don't use iMessage down there. Every text you send or phone call you make is on WhatsApp. So I definitely recommend you download that app before going down to Latin America, as it's going to be essential. Even stores and restaurants use WhatsApp for reservations and stuff. Now, while that's cooking, I'm going to go over the freedom and lifestyle aspect of Latin America, because a lot of you are probably wondering why the heck you'd even want to go down there. And honestly, personally, I think it's worth the little bit of risk you put yourself at for the reward that you get on the lifestyle end. And honestly, I've kind of grown to like the roughness and the wildness of Latin America. First of all, the lifestyle you can live is much more extravagant than you would be able to in North America based on the same income. For instance, on my income, I can't even really afford to live out of my parents' basement. But in Latin America, I can afford a nice one-bedroom apartment on a floor that's high up that even had an ocean view. Like, you can afford a lot more. In Canada, you definitely have to check the bill when you go out, but in Latin America, you don't. You can go to the bars and the restaurants and not really have to worry as much about how much you're spending because it's so cheap. And if you want to order in, there's Pedosia and Rappi, and those delivery services are honestly a joke at how little you pay to have something delivered. Like, I got a pizza delivered in Peru for like $1. It baffles me to this day on how the locals can live off of what they get paid for a delivery. The weather's amazing all year round for the most part, depending on where you go, of course. But when it's winter up here in Canada and my family's digging themselves out of a snowbank, I'm in Latin America, chilling on a beach with nice sunny hot weather, and I don't have to really worry about wintertime. Not to mention the view is amazing in a lot of the area. Like you got mountains, beaches, rainforest, deserts, whatever you want, you can get in Latin America. Another thing that I like about it down there is the freedom you have. Like I mentioned earlier, this hike that my mother and I went down in Peru. And in Canada, you wouldn't have even have had the choice to go on that hike. It would have been closed right off. Where in Peru, you kind of did it at your own risk. And as long as you have your common sense, it's nice to have that freedom to make your own choices and not have the government make them for you.
Recuerdos míos de esa noche, cuando yo te tuve aquí, solo pa' mí. A ver, recuerda cuando te escapabas y tu novio a ti te llamaba.
Now, the next point I want to talk about is neighborhoods. Honestly, choosing the right neighborhood could make or break your entire trip. And if you choose the right one, that's when you can live like a king. Now, I can't go over the process of how to do this in one point, so that's why I made an entire video on that. So if you want to check it out, click right here and don't forget to click subscribe.